Hello, everyone. This is the Hyperwave channel with Lucid Investment Strategies. Two of our three going on four partners, and we'll be talking about all of that in a couple of weeks. And Socrates is our newest member. We've got another one joining shortly, but it couldn't be happening at a better time relative to what we're seeing in the marketplaces. It's a little bit like a bunch of long-tailed cats in a room full of rocking chairs. Everybody is very nervous, on edge. And by everybody, I mean not just people in crypto, people in the precious metals market, people in the stock markets around the world, people in the bond markets around the world. Interest rates are doing things that we have never seen before in terms of the speed with which they're moving opposite the stock market and the economies. We've got a G20 meeting starting this week that politically is going to be enormous, where President Xi and President Trump are supposed to get together. Putin and Trump might be getting together. A lot of very, very important geopolitical, macroeconomic things are going on, but they're being led, in my mind, by the three asset classes that Socrates and I keep talking about. And so we're going to go into those tonight. We're going to go into Bitcoin and crypto, take a look at the weekly closes. It's been 3 days since Bitcoin broke through the 10,000 level, and it's trading between 10,000 and 11,000 for 3 consecutive days now, trying to get up over 11,000, but we'll take a specific look at that and try to talk about what that means. Socrates, how are you doing tonight?
How's it going? I am doing well. It was a great weekend for me. I got to play some golf and have been looking at some charts. Just got back from the hot springs and am ready to go looking at some weekly closes.
Okay, great. At the end of this, I want to give a brief summary of how Lucid Investment Strategies is looking at all of these asset classes. But first, let's look at the details of what's going on. And we're going to start with the thing that I think is the most important, which is Bitcoin, the most exciting, which is Bitcoin, the thing that has the most potential, not only for investors and speculators to make an enormous amount of money, but much more importantly, and less selfishly, to get the world back on a firm footing, which it has not been on for a century now. It's experimented with all kinds of different ways of hiding fiat money and keeping control of fiat money to the detriment of not only those countries in the long run, but to every one of us. And Bitcoin, I think, has the possibility of getting us out of this mess. But that has nothing to do with what is the price doing today. What's the price going to do in the next 6 months? The only way to get through that stuff is to actually look at the daily, weekly, monthly charts and keep on top of it. And I know of no one better to do that than Socrates, and so I'm going to turn it over to him. Let's take a look at the crypto closes, and particularly Bitcoin.
All right, let's do it. I will share my screen now. Okay, here we go. And remember to click on that. Pull up the weekly. Okay. So let's see here. I want to take this off and what we're looking at is the weekly close on Bitstamp, which came in at $10,831. First close above $10,000 since February, the last week of February 2018. There wasn't a favorable response there, but much different circumstances that we're looking at now. So basically, there is a number of questions, primarily wondering whether this is an exhausted move or whether there's some gas that could be left in the tank. And there are a number of tools that I like to use to determine that. That is the TD sequential, the average directional index. And today I'm actually going to be starting with the Ichimoku cloud, because look at that. We have a close above the cloud. That is a long entry based on this metric. And it is now telling me that the long-term trend is bullish. So I am now no longer just short and medium-term bullish. I am long-term bullish. Everything is pointing towards the trend being bullish, short, medium, and long term, and that did not happen until about 10 minutes ago when this candle closed above the cloud. That's the weekly cloud, and it did so with a bullish Kumo twist and a bullish TK cross. So for me, this is the big news. We've got price above the cloud. I do use traditional settings. Many in crypto use, I think it's like double settings or crypto settings. I have tracked both and strongly prefer the traditional settings on the cloud. As a matter of fact, I almost totally abandoned it when using the double settings. And since moving back to traditional, it's been working like a charm for me. So this is something that is very important. We want to see price stay above the cloud. We do not want it to now re-enter with a close back inside the cloud, which is at a very interesting point because this candle is an extended range candle. It's more lengthy than the average, otherwise known as a marubozu, this being a bullish marubozu. And when you get one of those, you do not want to see the price retrace 50% of the body. So we do a little Fibonacci retracement, just using the body, and that is at 98.98. So really, if we are to expect continuation, we do not want to see this candle pull back to more than 50%. Preferably, you want to see it stay above 61.8%, and that is right where the cloud happens to be waiting, and it generally tends to act as significant support when the price is above it, and resistance when the price is below it. So here, if we do dip down to this area, this is where I want to see the price go the lowest over the next week. If I'm going to be still expecting continuation to the upside, that's based on this candlestick analysis, as well as the Ichimoku cloud on the weekly chart. So now we're going to take a look. So the first question that we started with was, is this an exhausted move or is there more left in the tank? Ichimoku Cloud is saying this is just the very beginning, that basically the entries according to this was an edge-to-edge trade when you re-entered here, closed inside right here. That was an entry for an edge to edge. Now that that's been achieved and we have broken through, this is basically the final entry that you would really want to get. You would want the price now to stay above the cloud and for the Tenkan and Kijun Sen to follow. So basically this is saying that right here was a very iffy entry, that this isn't really, you're not really expecting this to be a trend. You're just kind of expecting a reversion to the mean, whereas now it's just showing the very beginning stages of a trend. Just had this bullish Kumo twist and this close above. So that is showing the beginning stages of a long-term move. TD sequential is tending to agree. That just closed a green 2 above a green 1. The entry would have been back here at 93.81, but still signaling that this is very early on in a move. The first maybe 20% or so of the move, and this was very strong. According to this indicator, we got above this TDST level last week and continued through, closed above this risk line, which I really don't know much about, but I believe that if you are shorting somewhere off of this 9, then this is your stop loss, as I understand it. Like I said, I really don't know much about it, but it has been an interesting boundary to watch. I have noticed the price kind of respecting that, so closing above that is significant. And now we are on a green 3, potentially it breaking above the 2 could be an indication to add. Now we are going to pull up the average directional index, zoom out a little bit. Okay, so here we see the little color scheme I've got drawn on to show strong versus exhausted trend. And now we do see the weekly is starting to get towards exhaustion. However, this being this close to where I have determined that the trend becomes exhausted is not necessarily something to worry about quite yet, because what you really want to look for is for it to roll over. Once just a crossing doesn't tell you anything, it tells you to be on guard, but really what you want to see is it roll over when it gets to this exhausted territory. And as we can see, it can cross and go way above before rolling over. So this is something that's an indication to potentially be on guard, but it's not anything to worry about just yet, as far as I'm concerned. Even if it does cross 50, sometimes the biggest moves will happen when it's above here and continues moving upward, like we see back in here. So on this, we're going to be watching for it to cross 50 and then start to roll over. If that happens in line with a TD 7, 8, or 9, that will be a strong indicator to me that the thing is exhausted, especially since it would be the third 9 in a row. I think on Friday we talked about how I have seen a number of 3 weekly 9s in a row, but I've never really seen 4, and I would be paying very, very close attention if we get a third weekly 9, and especially if that is in conjunction with this ADX starting to roll over. But for now, it's still in strong trend territory, and the TD sequential agrees. So I'm just going to pull up the daily chart. Before I do that, we can take a look at the next area of horizontal. That's based on the weekly candles. We could make this a zone and put in another line there. That's at 11.75 or so. So that would be the next areas of horizontal to pay attention to. While we're on that, we might as well throw the fib on the weekly long-term. And we do see that the 50% fib is right in line with those horizontals. So this is a very important number for a number of reasons. The 11,390 up to 11,745. We've got multiple horizontals, the 0.5 fib, and multiple horizontals from candle closes and opens. So that's where to keep an eye on. From there, I am inclined to think that we will make it through based on the TD sequential being on a 3 and this thing being in strong trend territory. The other reason is the daily ADX is extremely interesting to me right now. We see that it just crossed above 25. It just entered strong trend territory, which we have made some significant moves following that. That's definitely a indicator to me that is telling me we've got multiple days and weeks left to trend, and the higher time frame agrees. So that's something that I'm paying very close attention to, and is what makes me inclined to think that the overhead horizontal resistance will break. However, I am very much on guard to be wrong there. We have made an enormous move, and we are at a confluence of resistance. So I am paying very, very, very close attention and very ready to be wrong and to start getting out of my positions. Just taking a look at the daily TD. It is also not quite getting to overbought territory. Sure don't like seeing these wicks on the daily. It's showing significant supply above 10,825. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Would be failing to get above this area, having a high here and then a lower high, and a lower high would be something that would be jumping out at me and telling me to proceed with extra caution. But for now, I am really liking what we're seeing out of that weekly close based on the TD sequential, based on the average directional index, and more importantly to me, based on the Ichimoku cloud getting a close above. And it's the first time that it has been bullish since 2017. I guess maybe it was rolling over in 2018. But hasn't turned bullish, hasn't given a buy signal like this for a very long time, and is something that I will be paying very close attention to. And that is the analysis that I have on Bitcoin.
Terrific. That's great. Do you want to take a look at some of the other alts, Ethereum and Litecoin? A couple of interesting things were happening there. I was listening to a number of other analysts.
Oh, I hope you didn't cut out. I am afraid that you cut out, Tyler. So I will just keep going. And if you can rejoin, that would be great. So let's see. Okay. Sent him a quick message. If you can hear me, Tyler, I will continue, but I cannot hear you. So what has been most interesting to me over the last couple of days is this divergence that we've seen with Litecoin. Bitcoin has been rallying significantly As everybody is well aware, just smashed through 10K. Let's look at the last. So let's look at daily candles. Litecoin versus Bitcoin. I know these charts will be very small, but just take a look at how the last 2 daily candles are red and in a big way for Litecoin. This is against USD, not against BTC. And the prior 2 before that really didn't go anywhere. So this thing's been trapped in a range for the last couple weeks, while Bitcoin has been crushing from 8,000 up to over 11,000. So that's something to me that has been extremely interesting, and I have been viewing this as a big buying opportunity, and it's sure starting to look like I may need to reevaluate. So as you can see here, I had this ascending triangle drawn and seeing Bitcoin crushing through and Litecoin getting a close right here. This was a big buy signal to me, and I took it. I really liked the risk reward. I thought it was going to go much further than the measured move here. Based on the halving coming up, that was essentially my target, was to hold through the halving date, and was really, this was the highest confident trade that I've had for this year, based on the bullish continuation pattern with the upcoming halving and Bitcoin being way ahead. If you followed along over the last couple of weeks, you'll notice that I really like to pay attention to what is leading and what is lagging, and getting into a lagging pair is something that I really like to do. So let's take a look at the EMAs on the 4-hour chart. So we had support from the 50 EMA. We were having no trouble closing back above. I think I was buying back in here and in here live. I don't remember exactly what I was doing every day, but I do remember paying very close attention to the bounces off of this 50 EMA on the 4-hour chart, and then the closes back above the 9 EMA, and then this breaking through of the ascending triangle was my area to get fully entered. So now my position is almost certainly underwater. I would have to double check, but this thing is moving pretty quickly, and certainly not something I like to see. We noticed that it ran into this, we've had a couple kind of traps up here in the 140 area, which has been really surprising to me. Really didn't see much resistance there at all. So this is something that just really isn't making any sense to me. If anybody has some sort of explanation, I would love to hear it. But essentially, I was not at all wanting to see this pull back into the middle of this trading range. Once a pattern confirms, if it pulls back into the middle of the trading range, then it is likely that this was a trap, and that's what we're getting a strong indication of here. Now we're challenging these lows, just not looking good at all. And the 200 EMA is way down here, so way back at 120, which would be my next target if we do close below this close below this 50, and then get a bearish cross with the 9. So that's a long ways away, and I don't think I would want to be holding my long all the way down through here. This was the area that I was looking at. Basically 30% of my position, I had stop losses set for right in here, and that's where I'm going to have to reevaluate. If we spend much time down here at all, I'm going to be exiting and happy with the risk reward of this. Even though it turned out to be a loser, there's a ton of upside if it turns out to be a loser, which it looks like it will, but there's still plenty of room for something like this to happen. So still a little too early to be overly concerned, but I'm definitely worried. And like I said, if I do get stopped out, then I'll just be happy knowing there's a bunch of upside over the next month with this setup, and not a whole lot of downside. All protects that very well. So now I'll be moving on, and we'll just be checking in to see if Tyler is there. Can you hear me? No, I guess we'll be flying solo here for a little bit, crack another beer, and move on to the next chart. So Ethereum has been working out well. If anything wasn't going to work out as planned, I thought it was going to be Ethereum, and it sure made a nice move. We see that when it broke through this trend line here, and this bull flag here, it started to take off in a significant way. And what I am really, all right. Hey, Tyler, you're on speaker.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, my internet went out. We're having some big thunderstorms here. I thought you had got knocked off, but I guess it was me.
Yep. Yep, I'm just moving forward, and I'm sure that people can hear you if you want to use the speakerphone. Otherwise, I can just kind of work my way through.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll be listening if I can get back on the internet. And if so, I will rejoin you. Otherwise, just finish up. And I know you'll do a great job. So we'll talk later.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Alrighty. So a little internet outage in Chattanooga, it sounds like. Got some thunderstorms, and the main man's internet went out. So you guys can either go enjoy the rest of your Sunday night or stick with me as I fumble my way through some of these charts. It will be me from here on, unless Tyler is able to get some of his internet back. All right, so taking a look at Ethereum. And we notice that the bull flag was confirmed and the price followed through. And what I was paying very close attention to was the top end of this channel. And we do see that it looks like a significant boundary in the sense that once it stalled here for a little bit, and then once it broke through, it continued. And now it looks like it could be acting as support. We see this wick coming down slightly below it. And let's see here, and then the price is bouncing up as we speak, but we do not know how long that will last. So that will be the important area of interest for me on Ethereum USD, is if it can support above this channel, above the top of this channel, then it should be in for a big continuation. And my target has been a return to this area of horizontal at around 400, potentially as low as 350. But I'm thinking this thing is going to get up to about 400, and that is because of the target that I have given from the flag with the parabolic pull, which is something that I love seeing, of course, which brings us right up to that zone. So I'm really expecting ETH to return there and to do it pretty quickly. I've got a large position on it, and I have been very happy, but I really want to see it support above this channel. That will be extremely important to me. If it doesn't do that, then I'm going to be looking at scaling out and taking some profit. My stop losses have all been moved to break even or slightly into the money. If you remember, back here is where we were buying. So absolutely no reason to be taking on any risk with this trade at this point, and very good reasons to be scaling out if we get any weakness. 300 is going to be a very big number as well. Anybody that has followed Ethereum for a while remembers how long this thing can consolidate at 300. I mean, this thing was a nightmare back in here, from 295, 285 up to like 305, 314. So this basically was all consolidating 300. It kept coming back to it, needed more volume there. And that is a big number for ETH, is getting back above 300. So not only do we have the top of this channel, we've got that historical number of 300, where if this can stay above 300 for the next few days, then it should be primed to blast off back up into here. Whereas if it cannot, if it falls back below 300 and stays below there for even a day or less, like 16 hours, then it should fall back into this channel, which to me would be a very bad sign and would probably indicate a return back into this area. And I would not want to be holding my trade all the way through that. So what has been very interesting to me is, so we've seen with ETH, now it has been rallying alongside BTC, whereas Litecoin has just like stayed. It hasn't done anything. It's just been flat, and now it's even selling off. So even though ETH is rallying with Bitcoin, do you think that it's keeping up? Bitcoin just made a big move, and so did Ethereum, from sinking $230 up over $300. Which one do you think is outperforming which? And that is a very important question to me. I thought the chart was here. It is not. So we will get it pulled back up. Hold your horses. And here we go. What do we see? We see ETH back below 0.03, which again is another huge number for it. Seeing that Ethereum rallied strong but was unable to keep up with Bitcoin is very, very important, and something to pay very, very close attention to. In 2017, 2018, what was going on with ETH BTC as Bitcoin was absolutely going to the moon in November, December, October of 2017? It was completely leaving ETH in the dust, and doing so in a big way. This was all bull market territory. Bitcoin's rallying, and ETH USD is either stuck around 300 or it's also rallying, and it just could not keep up. Look at that move down. So this is something that I really want to see, is Bitcoin rallying and ETH BTC dumping. Let's get a longer history chart. Talking about Poloniex. Okay, so we've got a huge area of historical support, and basically we're looking at what can happen when Bitcoin really takes off. This was when Bitcoin was just mashing new all-time highs every week, it seemed like, and what was happening to ETH BTC? Dumping hard, broke down support of a descending triangle. Okay, so keep this in mind, because we might be seeing a similar situation. This is just an enormous pattern, enormous descending triangle. Breaks it down as Bitcoin is crushing and going parabolic. This is November. Oh, son of a gun. This is 2016. Sorry about that. Here's the 2017 dump off. So what I was saying was accurate, in the sense that in November, December 2017, you've got ETH dumping versus Bitcoin. But back in 2016 is when it developed the descending triangle. So if we look at this sort of situation here, it very much looks like it could be developing another massive descending triangle. And sure, It looks like we broke out of it to the upside and now it's invalidated. I say not so fast. This, to me, reeks of a bull trap right here. Why do I say that? There's no follow through. I mean, it's just weak. You get one close above and it instantly starts retracing. Okay, so we got a huge close here. This is where we need to see some follow through. Instead, it instantly starts retracing. We can get a throwback, but this isn't how you want to see it. You want a big breakthrough, a fast, violent throwback. This little rollover meander all the way down is not at all what we want to see. Look at the volume. I mean, that is not any sort of breakout volume that you'd want to see. That small amount of volume, to me, reeks of a bull trap and a fake breakout. So if that's the case, what would we expect? You see probably that I have an alert set right here at 0.0265 on Poloniex. And if the price breaks down that area, not even needs to close, just falls below that area, that's going to be a big sell signal for me. This is massive support, but what are we getting? We got a big bounce, okay bounce, weak bounce. The picture a ball that you drop high, it falls on the table and it loses momentum with each bounce, and then eventually it falls off the table. That's exactly what I am seeing as the most likely outcome here. After failing to break through prior horizontal support, finding resistance, now rolling over, and it looks like it's coming back for a retest. We notice this 0.03 is a massive area historically right here. So breaking down that is a huge indicator to me to be on the lookout. And now I've got my final area set. And what is so important to me is seeing what sort of environments cause ETH BTC to sell off. And if you maybe remember when I first started talking about alts, I talked how important it is to track them day in, day out and know exactly what is happening when they make a move. If ETH BTC is falling, does that mean that BTC is falling and ETH is falling, or that they're both rising and ETH and that BTC is just rising faster? Because when that happens, when you get this environment where it's a Bitcoin bull market, Bitcoin's going up and ETH is going up, but at a slower rate, that is a very, very, very important environment to capitalize on, in my opinion. And it's one of the best sort of situations that I know how to trade, in the sense that what is the risk? If BTC goes up and ETH BTC goes down, okay, then we're looking good. If BTC goes down, what do you think is going to happen here? This is going to go down too, almost certainly, in my opinion. If BTC is dumping, then ETH is going to dump too, and it's almost certainly going to dump at a higher rate. Bitcoin dumping is the most likely scenario for this pair to sell off. When Bitcoin is in a bear market or selling off, that is when this is highly likely to be selling off. So if it's also selling off when Bitcoin is pumping, then that tells me we've got a situation where it's going to be very hard for this thing to gain value and sustain it. Basically, what you're telling me you need is for Bitcoin to go sideways and ETH to explode. And sure, that could happen, but it seems like a less likely outcome than the other two combined. You've got there's three outcomes. Two of them lead to this thing going down, and the most ideal outcome leads to it going up. That presents some pretty interesting opportunities. So if this alert does trigger, I'll tell you right now that my target is going to be 0.01 and probably even 0.008. And that is because when Bitcoin is in a strong bull market and Ethereum is failing to keep up, it can sell off long and hard, and especially if that is coming off of a enormous descending triangle breakdown. So something to keep an eye on. If this does maintain support right in here, then it certainly does have plenty of room to the upside. But if it does not, then look out below. So that is going to be what I wanted to look at for the most part on crypto. Let's take a quick look at the lira, which has sure been an interesting situation. As far as I understand, the results are back, and Erdogan's man did not win. So maybe a little power to the people. Potentially they are figuring out what's going on, and they are banding together to change their circumstances by electing people that potentially are not Muppets for Erdogan. So this could be a great day for the people of Turkey, but I really don't know a whole lot about the political environment. I'm mostly just a chartist and mostly just listen to what the charts are telling me. And what's this candle telling me right here? This is telling me a very interesting story, and is telling me to pay very, very close attention to these next few hours. Right here, you all may recognize as my phase 3 trend line. There are closes below, but this is the 4-hour chart, no problem. We've got the weekly closes continue to stay above and wick off nicely, just what I like to see. So right here, what do we have is this situation's a little easier to understand when you're not using hollow candles. And what we have here is a huge gap down. So it did just what I wanted, wicked off of this phase line and closed significantly above at the close was 5,815. And this opens at 5,735. So that is a significant gap down, and now we appear to be rallying off of it, which is just what I wanted to see in a very big way, and was not feeling great about it because we took out this low. I really didn't like seeing that. I love seeing this action here with the wick, the low between the higher low and the higher low. But having this gap down and take out this wick was something that I really didn't want to see. Came down to test these horizontals from these candles here, and appears to have held, and now it's bouncing strong. So that is a very interesting candle from closing Friday here and then opening all the way down here and now bouncing strong. Sometimes the biggest rallies come up after that type of action where there's a huge gap that finds support and then creates higher local highs. Way too early to say that yet. It's still time to hold our breath and really be paying very close attention to where this closes. It should tell us a lot. If it can retrace 50% of this candle, I'm going to be starting to feel pretty good. We're going to be getting back above these horizontals from this. Whereas if it does find resistance from around 577, that could be the markets telling us that the situation in Turkey is starting to turn around. If the weekly candle does close below this trend line, I will be fully exiting and will be expecting a big correction for the lira, which means it would get stronger against the dollar. So before closing down for the day, I'm just going to take a quick look at gold, which recently opened. All right. And it looks like a pretty sweet open so far for gold. Opened the day at 1398 and instantly hops back above 14. We're now at 1405. This is in a very important spot, not a price where I'm personally interested in buying. Tyler and I have very different styles. I can see a lot of validity, a lot of merit in buying this breakout. However, I already do have significant exposure, and I am more the type that wanted to be kind of buying back in here on this bull flag. On this cup and handle was tough because you got a breakout that was so far above, and that was at this resistance here. So I already had plenty of exposure to gold, probably almost as much of my net worth is exposed to gold as is crypto. So I am totally fine, not necessarily buying here, but if we get a nice throwback, then I could change my mind pretty quickly. Let's try that again. If you do something like that, I would be interested in potentially adding in a perfect setup where we come down around, we maybe test this 50 EMA, and then get back above the 9, and then create some sort of rounding bottom or get a nice reversal candle off of this. That could be a very, very interesting situation where breaking through a long-term boundary and then throwing back is some of the highest probability entries that I am knowing how to find myself. And this right here would be one of them. It's tough to say, like, I don't necessarily expect that to happen. Maybe we rally up to 1432 or so. And then it does that. I would prefer to just see it smash through. The best breakthroughs have no throwback. Whenever there's no throwback, it just means that, you know, that's the strongest breakthroughs that you will ever see. Just don't look back. So that is kind of basically what I want to see from here. But if it does pull back, then I will be keeping my eye on potentially adding to my exposure. Let's just take a quick look at some indicators. And everybody who's staying with me, you are awesome, because we all know that everybody tunes in for Tyler, and I'm just the Robin to his Batman at best. So here we do see a green 8 that is inside of a bearish wick. So that is definitely interesting and makes me think that this scenario here is somewhat likely to see this kind of pullback here. Now that I see we're on a 9 and we're starting to wick down. So keep an eye on a 9 with a bearish wick, either if it does break through here or not. Just keep an eye out for a reversal candle with a 9. Even getting it on an 8 is very significant to me. So go ahead and take a look at the ADX. Not near as pretty as on my Bitcoin chart. I kind of want to figure out how to code in some colors here because it does look so nice. Wow, look at the spread on that ADX. That tells me that that is a very significant breakout. That's what you want to see on a breakout. We're looking at ETH BTC, seeing almost no volume. I know we weren't looking at the ADX, but it just looked weak in every way, whereas this does not. I mean, that is very strong. Seeing that gap, that's all buying pressure building, selling pressure decreasing, ADX, boom. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take those off real quick and just take a look at, this is probably where If I did have a red zone drawn, it would almost certainly be right about here. Let's go ahead and get a horizontal line drawn. So anybody watching at home, you can do this yourself just by going and seeing where does this thing tend to top out. It's pretty much as simple as that. So we can draw a red line there and see that if this gets above here and starts to roll over, then the ADX is telling us we have what is an exhausted move. So this would be where I'd be drawing my overbought zone, and sure enough, daily is above it on an 8, but it hasn't started to roll over yet. So we do notice that it can go significantly higher, and some big moves can happen from here. Back here in 18, we went from 1250 down to 1160, and that whole move occurred with this above the overbought line. And notice how it did even roll over there and just failed to really follow through. That was a ton of momentum. So moral of the story is that the daily is showing some overbought conditions based on the TD sequential and average directional index. The weekly begs to disagree, says that this is just the start of a trend, is just breaking through 20. Very, very important to see that. And that is exactly what I'd expect to see based on buying this breakout. If this is a real breakout, we should see the ADX agreeing, and it sure does. RSIs are getting a little overbought, but are not showing a divergence just yet. So it does seem like this pullback situation to throw back and retest prior resistance for support is more likely than I originally thought, and something to pay very close attention to, but not necessarily something I will be hoping for or expecting with a very high likelihood. So I'm going to wrap that up. It has been a pleasure chatting with myself this evening, and I appreciate everybody who has taken the time to tune in and provide comments, and I will be looking forward to continuing this regularly. Tyler is leaving town tomorrow and going overseas, so there might be a little bit of a break, or maybe you guys will just be stuck with me flying solo. So I don't know what'll happen, but we will let you know. So have a good rest of your Sunday evening. And that being said, I will say cheers.